In this episode, we continue talking about personal branding. I have Titilope, a two-time top voice of LinkedIn. She dives deep into how she uses her confidence, how she uses her family orientation to build and put herself out there. You're gonna love this conversation. I did. Please do tune in. Professional Pillow Talk with Titilope. Brilliant. What a beautiful day. Titilope, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. And how are you doing as well?
Thank you so much for asking. I am hot, but blessed and grateful. So I know that you
awesome.
are calling out of Nigeria, right?
Yeah.
Nigeria, beautiful place. Tell me a bit about Nigeria. Actually, I've never been there.
Oh my gosh. So Nigeria is an amazing place with amazing people.
Yeah.
When I think about Nigeria, I think about two things, right? I think about good food. Yes.
Okay.
I think about style. Like Nigerians have like the best style.
That is true.
And then I said two things, but let me add one more. Then I think about, excellence. So like making a lot with very little, rising above very tricky circumstances to excel at whatever we lay our hands upon. So those are like the three key things I would say when I think about Nigeria. In terms of like Nigeria itself as like a country and coming to visit, I stay in Lagos. Okay. And Lagos is very fun. Although when you step out of your house, you're like spending money even without getting anywhere, right? It's super expensive sometimes. But it's fun, the scene is very bustling depending on what you like. So restaurants, arts and culture, community, it's all there. So yeah, that's Nigeria in a nutshell. But I have to say that, at the end of the day, like Nigeria is very big and Nigeria is very diverse with different cultures, different states. We have 36 states and a capital. So like Nigeria is so multifaceted. So this is just honestly one part, and from my own point of view, basically.
Okay. So there's more pages. There's more pages
exactly,
to this book,
Exactly.
Amazing. But I love how you talk about excellence. Like that's poster. And I know that you are a poster girl of Nigeria. If you want to talk about excellence, being a two-time LinkedIn top voice, right? 25 under 25 global award leader, 30 under 30, recognized as the 2023 woman deliverer. I want to understand, what does that mean? What that award?
So basically,
yeah.
Sorry, did you ask?
Yeah. But okay, anyway, thanks for disturbing, because the list goes on. You've got many pages of excellence, and I just want to say congratulations. You're an inspiration. Having followed your story for some time now, I think we've been LinkedIn buddies for about almost 2 years or so. And maybe you can deliver. I'm quite interested, recognized as Women Deliverer 2023 for driving change.
So basically, Women Deliver is like the largest gathering of like women activists and gender equality activists from all over the world. And I think it happens every 2 years, I would say. Yeah. And so this year it happened in Rwanda. And so they had like an exhibition where they basically like spotlighted 20 young, global leaders who were driving change and disruption systems in their countries. And I happened to be one of the women recognized. And so what they did was they had and particularly was for people who weren't going to be at Women Deliver, basically. And so they had like blow up banners of like our picture and the work that we're doing. And so people could literally go and take pictures with me, even though I wasn't there. But more importantly, it, spotlighted why we did what we do, what we're doing rather, and, what the future looks like for us as women activists and gender equality leaders.
Wow. So you're an amazing person. You're good at marketing Nigeria. You're good at marketing yourself, but like context on who you really are. Like, give me even the cartoon version. Give me the version of who you really are. I'd love to know. Besides what I can't find on social media.
That's a really good question. So I would say besides, I'm really thinking about, besides social media, right? Inside and outside of social media, anybody that knows me knows that I'm super passionate about women. So I'm very passionate about, empowering women and girls. And, this isn't just something I do for people I don't know, but even people that I know as well, right? I think one of my greatest joys in the world, or one of my greatest, I would say, accomplishments in the world, is the fact that I get to be a resource for people around me, particularly the women around me. So whether, these are my family members, my friends, my former classmates, I really consider it like the greatest honor of my life to be that resource for people. So whether it's by making an introduction, whether it's by just sending a resource, having a 5 minute, brainstorm session to come up with an idea, that's really honestly what gets me up in the morning. Besides that, I don't know if people know this, but at some point, I'm sure I posted about it, right? I
Okay.
love competitive baking shows. Like, I am obsessed or not.
Excuse me,
I
you are
love
what?
I love competitive baking shows. Like, I am not the greatest baker. Like, I don't bake, but there's nothing I love more to just watch like bakers like really, really, sweating it out in the kitchen. And at the end of the day, they create something that is hanging from the ceiling or something that is like, I'm obsessed. I love that. Another thing I would say about me is I love books, but I love fiction. So I will read a good nonfiction book,
Mhm.
like some of the best books I've read in my life, I would say honestly are nonfiction. I remember reading this book by Viola Davis last year, phenomenal. I remember reading so many other books, and like sometimes I prefer to I prefer to read books with heavy topics rather
Okay.
than watch movies with heavy topics. So one of the books I can never forget was Say My Name by I think by Shannon Miller, about like the sexual assault case in a university in the US. I really enjoyed that book as well. So I like to read books like that. But outside of those, my major interest in books is fiction. Like, bring the fiction. I love to
Yeah.
read, books about like,
What's your favorite fiction book?
oh my God, that's a good question. I'll probably say that I do not have one
Okay.
because first of all, like I am a very tough book critic. So I'm like as much as I like to read books, I'm reading them like, let me see whether you know what you're saying.
Yeah. Facts.
But some of my favorite ones I would say is, let me put you on to Girl with the Louding Voice by Abi Daré. So it's a story about a young Nigerian girl who is, from a low-income background, and she was basically like sent off to another city to get married. And she like ran away, and it was so complicated, but it was really such a good book. And I think it resonates with anybody, regardless of the age that you are and your interests. So it's definitely one of the books that I really, really like. I'm
Girl
trying
with the
to
girl with the
Girl with the
loading
Louding Girl with the Louding Voice by Abi
louding
Daré.
voice. That's an
Louding. And
interesting.
so the idea is like she's not like the most well-spoken person. And so rather than say like girl with the loud voice, she says louding, like as like
Oh, so it's a little bit of broken
mannerism.
English.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So the book has like broken English and all of that. And
Oh,
fun
wow.
fact, fun fact, I think 2 weeks ago for International Day of the Girl Child, I got to speak at like a junior high school here in Lagos. And it was actually one of the books that I took for the girls because I felt like they would really enjoy it. I
Oh,
remember
wow.
being their age and being so obsessed with books. And so I thought, as one of the books I took it with me. And then I made a post about it on LinkedIn. And I tagged the author, and she commented and she was like, yay, and great that you added my book to the list. And so yeah, but yeah, really just back to the original topic, right? I really like books. I think that books are a very great way to like imagine, great way to get inspired and also to learn so many things I know.
Hmm.
I've learned them through reading and through books. Yeah, I'm trying to think about any other thing about myself.
But I think it's amazing because anyway, you present
Yeah.
yourself really well online. And even just a little bit now that I've learned about you that is not online, still amazing. Excellent. Like it's so cool.
Oh.
And like again, I'm just gonna say thank you so much for coming onto this podcast today. I'm super excited to jump into this topic of you and personal branding because the fact that you even just posted about the book online. The first question I want to ask is your upbringing, like, were you a confident child? Were you always public speaking? Were you, writing poems and telling your class? Like, what were you like as a child
Oh
growing
gosh,
up?
that's a good question. Every time I get this question, I remember, oh my God, we are growing old because why did I leave like secondary school like almost 10 years ago? What? Um, but yes, yeah, honestly, growing up, I would say, I grew up in a household where like my father was the only man, so I have sisters, and one of the reasons why I started to study issues to, obviously bridge the gap of representation and bridge the gap of that community, among Nigerian women and access to opportunities. But I would say, for the fact that I grew up in a house with women around me,
Mm-hmm.
helped me to have like good role models. So whether it was my sisters or it was my mom or we're like, so in Nigeria, we call everybody that is like older than you, auntie. So whether it was my aunties, and having all of those figures around me, even though every time I stepped out of the house, it was a different ball game entirely, right? Because of the Nigerian society and patriarchy. But however, home, right? The fact that my parents were raising girl children, I would say really helped a lot because from when we were little, they had instilled it into us that we were enough, that
Mm-hmm.
nobody could tell us anything. Like
Mm-hmm.
we were able to do everything. I learned how to I was pulling generator like at the age of like when I was a preteen or teen. Because who else is going to pull it? Like it's me
What?
now. And I could change like a light bulb like when I was like younger, like because we had to learn these things. We just like who else was going to do it, right? And so my
Exactly.
parents, never had like always made us know that we were enough. And one thing about them was like they didn't have like a lot of resources or whatnot, but they were willing to give whatever that they had to make sure that we got the best education, right? Growing up, basically. And so I would say that now flowed into like, of course, the schools that I went to. They were not necessarily like the best schools in Nigeria, like the best schools in the world, of course. But I would say that I will acknowledge that I went to very good schools. So
Uh-huh.
for my primary school, these schools were schools that, they were not necessarily like international schools or whatever, but the academics were there. The extracurricular activities were there. So from a young age, I remember from a young age in my primary school, so we used to have this thing where students would come because it's a Catholic school, and the students would come and then they had to like pray aloud or something. Like it was the culture of the school to like put you on the spot and like make you speak, right? Even from that young age. I remember the first ever thing I ever won in my life was when I was like in primary five, and I won like a drawing competition from like Mr. Biggs, one of the biggest restaurants at the time. So I had like while like those opportunities weren't so many, I would say like my school really tried its best to make sure that we had activities, we had societies, clubs, and were involved as much as we could be. And so when I moved to secondary school, again, I would say my school really tried. Like my teachers, they really tried their best to make us comfortable, to foster that sense of independence.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, of course, they were guiding us. So one of the examples I always give was like, for example, if you were a prefect in my school, in my secondary school, you had to have a speech. So we all got to like give a speech at assembly, whether you liked it or not. So it was like you knew that this was your day and you were going to give a speech at assembly. And
Uh-huh.
then besides that, right? And besides that, another thing that was also super helpful was my school really empowered us to ask questions and like bring up ideas. So I remember I can never forget, it was like our second to the last year of secondary school. Myself and my friends, we went to my principal's office and we're like, oh, like it was the international, I think it was Day of the African Child, and like we wanted to plan an event for the school, and they were like, yes, like what do you need? And so that was one of the first things I ever like, well, not the first thing I ever planned in the school. I would say the second thing I planned, not even the second thing. Oh my God, I planned so many things in secondary school. Oh my God, I'm just remembering. But I'll say like that was one of the big ones where we got to plan like an event for everybody in the school. We got to wear like our African and Nigerian attires. And most importantly, myself and my friends, we led like a charity outreach where we basically like raised money from people in the school and give it to our teachers to like buy like care packs, and we actually took it to 3 or 2 care homes in our community. And we did this by ourselves. Like, they were not babying us. Like, we had to like go to the care like homes and let them know that we're coming on this next week to bring the goods and the other things we're going to give to them. Like, we had to like they gave us the free reign to just be whoever we wanted to be. And I remember, now that you asked me that question, I'm literally remembering, like, I was able to, some of the things I did was I co-organized like something called, at the time it was Mavericks Got Talent. And so basically I got to like organize like a talent contest with my teacher at the time, my class teacher, and as well as some people in my school. I got to start a music club. So my school was very big on like, if you want to do something, just bring it to us and we'll answer you and we'll support you. So I would say that all of those, enabling things, the enabling environment that I had really helped me to put myself out there. I participated in a lot of writing competitions. Like, I wasn't shy. I would say that even in secondary school, I was probably answering questions better than in university in class, right? Because it was just like, nobody made you feel like you couldn't do it. So why would you think you wouldn't do it? I would say, at least for myself, right? You might speak to someone else in the same school and they might have something else to say, but I would say for my own experience, right? I felt like they made me know that I was enough, and they always like gave me that support to like do whatever I wanted to do, even at that age. Like, the last thing I would say is, I remember, so one of the biggest, pivotal moments of my life at that age was I switched. Many people don't know this, but I switched from science class to art class in like my last year of secondary school. Very risky move, but I remember telling like my lecturers, and rather my teachers at the time, and they were super on board with it. It's like my principals, even they were like, you want to do this, it's fine, like, do this. So that was literally the environment I grew up in, where like, of course, there were consequences for like silly actions, right? But where you did well and where you had good reasons for things, they would support.
Okay, that's interesting. So, given the environment, you feel that you were able to, present yourself, had a safety net in some sense, also maybe sparked your creativity. Would you say that it was difficult then for you to build a personal brand or put yourself out there? Like, I would think no, right? You probably found it very easy to go onto LinkedIn and share things.
Actually. So
right?
I'll say like, yes, it was to be very honest, it was quite easy for me, because even before LinkedIn, I used to have a WordPress blog back in the day where I was writing about politics and writing about Taylor Swift. And yes, I've always had, that I've always been writing, honestly. And I'll say like, I started writing even before I started building a personal brand. So writing was really my intro into doing all of those things. I've been writing since I was like in primary school, basically. So writing was really that, introduction or segue into what we now call personal branding for me. So I would say, to that extent, it wasn't hard, because I was already, like, to be fair, I was already good, like I was already a good writer, to be honest. I was a good writer already. And I was super curious as well. So I was already exploring things like WordPress on the internet. I was already like exploring some of those spaces that probably evolved into like what we have as personal branding today. But I must admit that, of course, like, it wasn't all rosy or whatever. I had to navigate, of course, like the general fears of I won't say like at the time I probably didn't term it as imposter syndrome, but yes, imposter syndrome. Of course, like, there was still, even as much as I had exposure to certain things, there was still a lot of knowledge gaps that I still had. There were lots of knowledge gaps that even I had. But one thing about me, curiosity, right? If I don't know anything, I will figure it out. I don't care how. So there was obviously navigating some of these things. There was also like maybe lack of access to certain opportunities, right? I would say, like, in comparison to maybe counterparts outside of the country, or even in certain schools or certain environments in Nigeria. So I would say all of those things were probably like factors that weren't as enabling. But again, to my original answer, yes, it was quite easy because of my background and the experiences I had.
Yeah, and that's great. It's comforting hearing how confidently you say, yes, it was easy for me. Now, I see you are very focused around female empowerment, female enrichment, and even your female wealth creation. If you had to now think about the important pages of your life that enabled you to, have this confidence, be curious, be able to write. And there are some other women or girls out there who didn't have that setting. And that's why sometimes they may be scared to put themselves onto LinkedIn. What would you say they should do? Because they're maybe not as privileged as you, but definitely have the opportunity to be as famous or as successful as you. What would you say? What would you say to that little girl now, or that teenager, or that mom who's like, Titilope, you're so cool. You're doing such great things, but I don't know how I can build this system, or I don't know how I can overcome this imposter syndrome because I want to put myself out there. What would you tell them? What would you tell them?
I love this question. And I would say I love it because it's at the center of the work that I do at Sisterly History, right? So I recognize that, growing up, I had those role models in my mom, my sisters, and my aunties, and all these other factors, right? I know that not everybody has that. And even today, not even that enabling environment, I would say, I don't know whether it has even reduced, right, in recent times, generally for most people that maybe even had it before. So the point is that really informs my work at Sisterly HU. So I really love this question. And just to go to the point, right, the first thing I would say is you have to, so at the end of the day, right, you have to be willing to put yourself out there, no matter how scary it might be. So there's a term that people always say called "do it afraid." So the point is that you are not afraid. The point is, well, no, the point isn't that you are not afraid. The point is you're afraid, but you do it anyway. And so I'll be honest and say, probably the first time, I can't remember now, but probably the first time I ever got to give a speech, or the first time I sent in an article for publication, or I did an essay competition, knowing myself, people don't know this, but I'm usually nervous before I do most big things, but you never know, right? But I'm nervous, and I agree that I'm nervous, but I will show up anyway, and you would not even know. Or sometimes I might even tell you that I'm nervous, but once the camera start rolling, or once I'm in front of this opportunity, I will just grab it. So it doesn't mean I'm not afraid, but I've conditioned myself to just showing up for me and showing up for others, regardless of how I feel about it. So it doesn't mean that, so let me point this out and say that it doesn't mean that, there are not some times where I have to take a step back from whatever it is that I'm doing because of maybe, of course, to take care of myself, take care of my mental health, or just to be at peace or something, right? There are times where that happens, and that is super valid. But outside of that, a lot of times you just have to put yourself out there. And one thing I always tell people is, don't be afraid to be a pioneer. So many things I'm known for doing now, I will be honest to say that many of them, I didn't necessarily see anyone around me doing them. So when I joined LinkedIn was not popular in Nigeria. I was literally the only person that I know. I was literally the only person that I know that was using LinkedIn in around me, right? So I was literally the only person that was using LinkedIn around me. And so I didn't necessarily have a blueprint, or I didn't necessarily have a blueprint, or something to say that, oh, this is someone that has done it before. I just decided to just start doing it, and I was a pioneer in this space. Same thing for even starting Sisterly HU. This is not to say that there were not other female publications in Nigeria doing amazing work. However, what's the type of community I wanted to build, I didn't find it anywhere else. So I had to put myself out there, and I had to just do it, regardless of whether I had seen somebody doing it before. One of the first things I did on LinkedIn around personal brand was, I remember, I think that was 2019. I did a series where a series called, I can't remember the name, oh my God, but it was like a series on LinkedIn where, people got asked questions and answer questions on a post. And I had never seen something like that before. But I sat down and made a whole plan. I got volunteers from like my friends. Like I did like this whole thing. So the point of what I'm trying to say is that a lot of times you might be the first, but don't be scared to like be the first, honestly, because that's how many people are scared because they don't have a blueprint or they haven't ever seen anyone do this thing that they want to do before. And they don't want to be like, I remember the other day I made a post on LinkedIn. I said, like, one of the ways that you stand out on LinkedIn is by sometimes being the first. So being the first to make that post about that topic that nobody has ever spoken about on LinkedIn, or being the first person to make a comment, being the first person to like enter into this person's DM. People are literally waiting for other people to send them DMs when they themselves should, like, there's no big deal to actually like send the DM first, right? So don't be scared to like be the first person to do stuff. And then also I would say there's that balance. I always say that there's the balance of overthinking and not overthinking. So on one hand, I would say do not overthink it. So yes, as cliche as it is, like honestly, don't overthink it. If you want to build a personal brand, just start, like I said earlier. But then at the same time, there's also the value and the reward of overthinking. So maybe it's not overthinking. I always say like preparing for stuff, planning stuff. So I would say like the middle of overthinking stuff and not overthinking stuff is intentionality. So being intentional about understanding that, okay, don't sweat the small stuff. Like fine, if you want to start creating, you can literally like start creating today. Like don't think, oh, creating is just for some particular people, or if you don't even know how to write, there are so many courses online, so many YouTube videos I can watch to become a better writer. And as much as you practice writing or speaking or whatever it is, the better you are at it. But on the other hand, right, preparation always makes you stand out. Strategy always gives you that that pizzazz that other people may not have. And sometimes I like sometimes even now, because like my schedule is sometimes really, really busy and I'm not able to sit down and plan stuff. But I usually know that like when I plan my content, for example, on LinkedIn, I usually have like, to me, I feel like my content is really better, but I'm not able to do that all the time, right? Right now because of like my schedule. But I'm just saying that there's a place for planning and strategy, and the middle of both sides of the divide, of not overthinking it and, thinking about it, in some way, right, is
putting in the time to
intentionality. Yeah.
No, that's really well expressed. And Sisterly HQ, we're jumping back a little bit. Why did you start it firstly? Why did you start Sisterly HQ?
Yeah, so I would say like Sisterly HQ really was started because the gap that Nigerian women face when it comes to opportunities, of course, like Africans generally, we already have like an opportunity gap. That's, right? But I would say like for women, particularly like Nigerian women, like that gap is even like more widened. So for example, Nigerian women, I think, are 17% less likely to get like jobs and other like economic opportunities in comparison to like Nigerian men. That's literally just one of the statistics, right?
Wow.
So when you think about things like that, you start to understand that there's a disparity. And when it comes to opportunities and access, particularly, women are disproportionately affected and they don't have equitable access. And then on the other hand, there's the issue of representation. I mentioned earlier that, I was fortunate to have like to grow up in a household where like women were the majority in my household. So whether I liked it or not, women were all around me, and I got to like see, of course, like their lives were not rosy. They dealt with so many challenges, but I got to see like how they were able to rise above them, many times with struggle, right? But they were still able to rise above them. And I got to see like a lot of that positive role modeling in my life. But like I mentioned earlier, right, outside of the home, it was a different ballgame entirely, because the Nigerian society is, like many societies, still super patriarchal, still, very male dominated. The spaces of power are held by women. That's just like the facts, right? So understanding that, first of all, that my experiences of living in a household where like women were taught to be enough, were appreciated, all of that wasn't the experience of everybody else. And also understanding that even, yes, okay, I outside of the home, it was fantastic. But when I got to like other spaces, right, even sometimes in school, right, even though I went to like great schools, but even in some cases in school, and even as I continue to grow up, when I got to university, you start to see like, hey, this thing is a bigger issue, and like there's this access and this representation is not there. And so I thought about it, like, why isn't there like a community for Nigerian women to make sure that our stories are being heard, and also to make sure that we have access to those opportunities and those resources that we've been historically excluded from? And so Sisterly History was born. And so for me, I've always seen technology as a tool for good. And so I thought about it again, like, what's the best way to even make this as accessible as possible? And digital technology came to mind. And so it was like, oh, we're going to create a website, we're going to like, use social media, because the truth is, like, people are already using social media these days. Like, I read recently that, over 50% of Nigerians actually have access to the internet, which is something that, many people may not even know. So even capitalizing on the digital sphere that already exists and using it as a tool to connect, because whether we like it or not, people on social media, but they are watching people do skits. Why can't they see like opportunities like contests, jobs, scholarships, and have trainings for people using those same tools? Skits are good. I'm not a hater. I like laugh, right? It's not like I watch your skits, but I'm just trying to say like there's space for all of these things on the internet. And that's really why I started Sisterly HU. And our goal is to close that opportunity gap someday. And our goal is also to, increase that representation, to show Nigerian women that they can they can succeed and excel in any space that they want to be in.
Okay. Wow. That is, it's a very noble cause that you're going for, but I think it's very valid. Like you said, it's right in front of you. Like, it would be an injustice to yourself, having seen the safety and opportunity that you had at home to thrive as a human, but a female specifically. But then you just go outside the door, you're now seeing this different world, which is actually not correct. It's not. It's inhumane, right?
Exactly.
So your establishment is a NGO, right? So what type of initiatives or what type of offering do you provide for the women that you work with?
Okay, so currently we are a digital community. I like to use the word digital community because I feel like that's much more representative of where we are at now. And so we currently like run a social enterprise model. We're still like, we're still struggling and figuring it out. But the point is, in terms of what we offer the women in our community, right, our mission is twofold. So, of course, there's the digital storytelling aspect to increase representation and make sure that our stories are being heard. And then there's the other aspect of access to opportunities and resources. So, from the storytelling aspect, so what we do is we empower women to tell their stories through our platform. So, for example, we publish like different stories of Nigerian women from all walks of life about anything really. The point is, you have it. We're giving you like this is your, like we're not even giving you a voice. I would say, like, you already have a voice. We're just amplifying it, right? So, for example, on our website, you see like we have interviews, we have essays of women over, across different topics, whether it's career, whether it's love, love, whether it's whether it's struggles, not great circumstances. Just the point is you have that chance to tell your story your own way and control your own narrative. And besides that, right, one of the other things that we started doing in recent times is we've been doing series. So earlier this year, we had a series for International Women's Month, or Women's History Month rather, called Period Diaries. And so the idea was period is still a taboo topic everywhere, but most especially like in Africa and Nigeria. And so we decided to have these diaries that will follow the life of a person that is menstruating in Nigeria. So whether she was dealing with cramps, or whether she, wasn't, like, I remember one of the stories of like, a woman saying that, I think she was saying like sometimes her husband used to get irritated by like her being on a period. I remember one of the first stories that we published that really resonated with a lot of people was the story of a student who was living on 30,000 naira per month, which is 30,000 naira per month is less than $50, just to say that. And she was
Wow.
experiencing period poverty. And I guess it shook a lot of people to the core because the university she was going to is University of Lagos, very renowned. And I guess many people did not understand that even people that we see around us, people that are on phones, in quotes, are still experiencing some of these things that, we think are only associated with certain people in the society. So it was like a reality check for so many people. And I remember we had like kind of like a viral moment because everybody was surprised that, wow, like this person, this student, at this institution is actually experiencing period poverty. So we got to share those type of stories that people weren't talking about. And most importantly, we also got to spotlight, organizations in Nigeria that, fight period poverty, and we're able to like direct people to their websites, share the work that they do. And of course, like, if people wanted to volunteer or donate, we kind of encourage them to do that as well. So besides that, we're currently running a series called Her Opportunity Story. And the idea is we want to spotlight Nigerian women who have gotten certain opportunities, because at the end of the day, like our work is to expose Nigerian women to these opportunities, give them the tools to get these opportunities. But there's still a lot of mental blocks, and and valid, to be honest, because when you're in a society that tells you you're not enough for so long, just because you're a woman, it's not just going to go in one day, right? So the idea is to expose them to the stories of Nigerian women who look like them, who have gotten these opportunities. So far we just started. So we spotlighted three women right now. One of them, got like a fully funded fellowship to the US. The other person got an internship at the World Bank, and she attends a public university in Nigeria. So just to show people that you can, like, you don't have to like be in the best university in the world to get into some of these spaces. Mindset is key, and of course preparation is key as well. But I guess that this is for mindset, but also for preparation, because these women get to talk about, like, their experiences, they give advice, they even share the resources that they use to land those programs, basically. So yeah, that's that for like storytelling, right? Then the other aspect of our work is the opportunities and resources. So we do that through like distributing opportunities on our website, basically we curate opportunities that Nigerian women are always eligible for, like as a principle. So whether, of course there'll be other requirements, right? But on our website, there's no paywall. You can just go to our website, regardless of whatever you are interested in. You can find a scholarship, an internship, a job, whatever. We've done that research to find whether Nigerian women are actually eligible, and they are, and so we put them on our website. So besides that, we also have like a page for resources on things like writing your CV, cover letter, interview prep, just even salary negotiation tools, right? We're able to like curate those collections of resources and share them on our website. Then besides that, one of the things that we started introducing in recent times, right, is we've been doing like training sessions. So we've been having like sessions on, we decided last year, we did like a session on applying for global scholarships, where we invited like 3 women across Africa, actually. And I think over 700 women actually like watched that live session. Yes. This year we've done a lot of sessions as well. Sure. We did one thank you. We did one in July, which was on embracing global opportunities, and we had like speed mentoring sessions, and it was really, really cool. And then in this October, we ran something called Opportunity Party. So we had like a series on Instagram Live where we had like every week, the first week was on like resume writing and cover letter writing. We invited women who were like either career coaches, who had like either like gotten so many opportunities and were good at those areas. And then the last week was a week where I was even the one that led the session, and I basically like took the women who were on our live session, I took them through like applying for like a mock. So we created like a mock job application, and we actually applied for it together, and like wrote our basically like made it so practical. And so we intend to do so many more of that. Currently as well, we're running it's like a bi-weekly series called Office Hours with Yvonne Alozie-Obi. She's an amazing, phenomenal Nigerian woman. She's actually a director at one of the largest banks in the UK, and she's also a coach, a work-life coach. And she's basically like running a series of the women in our community for free on like finding your purpose, how to like merge your passion and earning and getting high-paying skills. So we're also very big on empowering them with the tools to actually go for these opportunities. And I always say this, but like this is just a tip of the iceberg. Like what we're going to is even beyond all of this, right? And I'm so excited that I get to steward this impact and this, growth that we're making.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I can even just hear the way you're speaking. It's definitely the tip of the iceberg. But segueing to giving tools, right? Like, I think you've got a beautiful, perfect personal brand. Like, you've done well. And you speak about the pioneering side, which is, I think, credit to the person you are, because not everybody's going to be able to just pioneer their idea. So what tools would you suggest to somebody that you have, you've been on LinkedIn for some time? What tools could they use to springboard their personal brand?
Okay, I love this question. So I would say in terms of tools like soft tools, right? So of course, like preparation is very key. Being able to sit down and actually like honestly, like your pen and paper, like actually write down like your ideas, like, or if you're like me currently, at some point when I started, I used to use like a pen and paper, but now I have like an open page in my notes app where I just put ideas and in fact, I have a folder called LinkedIn where I just put like ideas every time on that. So we actually have like all those like hard tools that you can actually use. But that's like, is this soft or hard? I don't even know. It's just tools, right? But the other tools I would say is, one thing about me is I've always been super scrappy. So in terms of building like my personal brand, one thing that was very important to me was, and even when I started Sisterly HQ, was I don't have a lot of money. That's just a fact. And so I needed to find things that were either very affordable or very like accessible or even free, honestly. So in terms of like those type of tools, right, I would say Canva is a very big one. So you can use Canva to do things like from creating graphic designs to creating like content calendar to creating like documents. Like you can really use it. You can use it to define. I created my logo. I created like, because I have a logo of like my name and I have like brand colors. And I created all of that with Canva, and you don't even need a pro version. You can do all of this. I was using Canva free version for years. And even to this year, I had to switch back to the free version. But due to thanks to somebody in my circle, I now have pro. So shout out to whoever that person is. But basically, I'm just saying that even with the free version, which I used for years, you can make a lot do with Canva. LinkedIn Learning is there. There's so many videos on LinkedIn Learning that you can watch to either, whether it's on using LinkedIn, whether it's on branding. There's so many tools and so many like courses that you can take. So besides that, there's YouTube. Like I remember at some point in my life, I would go on YouTube and like find people who were talking about, using LinkedIn, personal branding. There's so many of all those things. And, one thing I always tell people is that one of the best ways to make sure that you actually like do the things that you want to do is to make it super easy for yourself. And how can you make it easy for yourself? We all know what we like. So for some people, they're always on TikTok. Like they're on TikTok 24/7. If you're on TikTok on 24/7, find creators who are talking about these topics on TikTok and follow them. If you like to read, subscribe to your newsletter. At some point in my life where I was all about at some point in my life, right, I really wanted to work in finance, maybe someday, right? But because I wanted to work in finance, I knew that I needed to surround myself with the knowledge of finance, with what was going on in the financial markets. And I knew that I'm not about to sit down in front of the news channel and be watching. Like, no, it cannot work for me. And so what I did was I found a newsletter that would just like take all of those information and synthesize it for me. I didn't have a lot of time back then, and would just like give me those highlights, and then I could click on it and go and read a news article. I like to read, right? So I found a newsletter and I signed up, and I was signed up to that newsletter for years. In fact, I remember sharing it with so many people in my network. And at that time, I remember those days, like there was no question you would ask me, like, fine, I would tell you, oh, the market is this down by this time. Like I was obsessed. But the point is, like, we all know what works for us. So if you're a newsletter girly, like I always say, like, subscribe to your newsletter. If you are more of like a film person, there are movies about personal branding. There are music, like maybe not music, they're podcasts about personal branding. Like I always say this, But I like to listen to like podcasts that I'm associated with, but typically I don't like podcasts that are very long. And I know that this podcast will be long, sadly, but for some people, they like it, right? And then they can find this and then they can listen to it. So the point is, find the best way to actually deliver is to find what works for you and actually like start with what works for you. At some point, you can branch out, but usually as adults, it's usually difficult. It's more difficult for us. So sorry about that. My alarm literally rang.
No worries.
But yeah. So for most of us as adults, right, we've already formed a lot of habits. So it's just easier for us to just like merge what we like and what we need, like what we need together, basically, if it's possible. So that's one thing I would say. There are so many free websites. So one, like when you talk about personal branding, particularly on the internet, so beyond like doing your personal branding on LinkedIn, there's also the fact that you might have to build like a personal website. So for the longest time, I built my personal website. One thing about me is all my things I do them by myself. So even
Yes.
Sister H's website, I built it by myself. So I remember the first website I had that was Titilope Adedokun.com was built on Wix. And I paid for it, but I found a discount that gave me like 50% off or something. Yes. And I remember like these days I don't even like my domain host anymore. But one of the reasons I went for my domain host at the time was because it was bloody cheap. So like so there are ways to like go around it. Currently, I don't even use our website host anymore because after the first year it started to become more expensive. And I personally could not justify the cost, right? So I decided to move to another host entirely. So I currently use card.co. I still pay some money, but I'm not paying as much as because again, I don't see the value of it. At some point, yes, I'll probably pay for like I can at some point in my life I might pay for like $1,000 website, but I'm not like I can't justify that cost right now. Because at some like it has to make sense for me to spend that amount of money. And with card.co, I mean you can build websites for as low as $9. Mine isn't like $9, but like there's so many other plans that you can check out for so cheap, honestly. And honestly, this is because I even want a .com with my own, right? If you don't even want a .com, you might not need to spend any money. You can use Notion, you can use Card, you can use like even Wix, Squarespace. No, Squarespace doesn't have a free option, but these other websites have like free options that you can use, and you can really use it to hone and build your personal brand. So I would say like there are so many, like don't let affordability like be the problem, because there are so many things. Again, I understand that yes, like there's still a bit of privilege to, because the truth is, yeah, even if you're not paying for the website, you're still using internet to like do all of these things, and you're still paying for those aspects, right? But the truth is, with the internet, with your mobile phone, you can literally build a personal brand without spending a dime. Besides, of course, the amount you're spending on internet already, right? But you just have to be creative. You have to be curious. You have to be willing to do the work. So many things I had to like go and learn them by myself. I remember, in 2020, I created an Instagram filter. I was just curious. I wanted to know how people were creating Instagram filters. And like, I was like, why can't I also create one? And I can't even remember the name of the platform anymore. But I literally like watched a YouTube video. And one thing about me is I like to like I believe in like watching stuff but actually doing stuff. So I watched that first, and then at some point I had like the video playing small, like I had the video playing, and then it'll tell me move, and then I'll move, and it was funny, but I got it done right, and I was able to even create more than one filter. So the point is, there are things that may not come naturally to you. There are things that you have to learn, whether it's how to build a website, whether it's how to like, if you want to start a podcast, maybe how to like navigate the whole podcast system or whatever. The point is you have to be willing to learn. And then last but not the least, I would say beyond all these technical tools and all these things, the people around you are such a huge resource, right? There's so much that you can get from people around you. I'm not even talking about people on the internet now. I'm talking about the people that know you, your friends, like obviously the people that want good for you, not like as we call not haters or bad belly as we call it in Nigeria, right? It's like you have to be discerning, right? Because before you go and tell someone and they'll kill your dreams, right? But there are people around you that are rooting for you in some way. And one of the things you can do is you can ask them questions and say like, what is the thing that you like most about me? Like what do you think, what about me inspires you? You're already finding content. Like you're already understanding what makes you stand out. It's like just by having those conversations, beyond conversations with people that you know, obviously conversations with people that you don't know. So be willing to speak with people. Don't be scared to like send someone a message to have a chat. Like they won't bite you. Last as they'll say no, and you might
Exactly.
follow up.
Exactly.
And even if you follow up and they don't answer, you move on to the next person. There's 7 billion people in the world. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you understand what I'm trying to say. So like, it's of course like sometimes it's annoying when you reach out and people don't respond to you. But mindset is key. Understand that you are not like people have bubbles outside of social media. People have lives outside of social media, and as long as you don't know them personally, you do not know them. You don't know what's going on in their lives. So I always say like give people grace when they don't respond to you. But where like one person doesn't respond to you, in my opinion, they're like there's 100 people that are willing to like sit you down and have conversations with you. Of course, like there are the nuances of how you're going to like send the message and how to like approach people, all of that. Again, the internet is your friend. There's so many articles, there's even ChatGPT now. So there's so many things that you can use to like make sure that you're putting your best foot forward. But I would say that, just put yourself out there.
Yeah. You know what? That is it's a mouthful of an answer, and I'm definitely I'm going to watch that over and over because you have so many little gems that really resonate with me. And I think the number one for me is actually just being like, there are so many people around you who actually want to be your cheerleaders, but I think we sometimes don't want to talk to those people and just say like, listen,
exactly,
what's good about me? Like, what don't you like about me? And you hit it on the head. That is content, right? I think that's such an interesting tool, and I even need to reflect sometimes because sometimes you run out of ideas. I must be honest. Like this week, I don't actually have enough ideas. I could actually just go to my friends and be like, what was my favorite post, or what do you think I should start talking about because you think that I know? It's very, very cool. Very, very cool. Now I've got one more question before we close up, and it's about you. It's about the advice you have for people who want to build their personal brand, but also the advice you have for people who also want to work in the industry, in the space that you're in, because I think it's such a underserved space. And you being in there, I'm sure you must see other business models that could come out there. So those are two questions.
So I guess I'll start with the last one. So one thing I'd say is if you want to work in social impact, I had a conversation a few days ago with a friend, and she asked me, she said, oh, Titilope, like I've noticed that so many people now are starting social impact initiatives. So many people are doing like social impact seems to be like it's the new tech, like it's the new buzzword. And she asked me why, and she said, like, for me, like I wonder, if people really are doing it for like the right reasons. And I remember telling her that, for me, I always say there are two sides to the coin, right? There's the fact that, of course, like there's so much interest in the area. And yes, maybe some people are not doing for the right reasons, right? But on the other hand, we cannot underemphasize the fact that we now have more needs right now as a world than we had a few years ago. Also, the information that we have access to about, SDGs, social impact, like children as little as like 4 years old are doing like things that talk about like climate change, gender equality. So people are exposed even at a younger age now, and there's with the mobile phone, right, to information about making change and being a change maker. So I guess that I would say that that's one of the reasons why there's an uptick in the conversation around social change. So one thing I would say is, first of all, please make sure you're doing for the right reasons. At the end of the day, right, everybody knows why they do things that they are doing. But one thing I would say is make sure that you're doing for the right reasons, because first of all, when it is not fun, because there are times where like doing anything in the world, regardless of whatever it is, there are times where like it's not rosy, like it's not fun. There are times where you have to like sit with very difficult conversations, take very difficult decisions, times where like you might even feel like giving up, honestly. And your why is what keep you going. And so when you're doing something for the right reason, when you actually have an innate passion for this thing, then that will be what will actually like keep you going. That's one thing I would say. So please do things for the right reasons. Don't do them for the wrong reasons. I mean, I would say like, of course, like financial prosperity is valid. As a woman, I would say that, you know, I remember one of the best speeches I've ever like participated in or listened to live was a speech like 2 years ago where one of the biggest leaders of gender equality in Nigeria and in social impact space led a talk at my university at the time. And she said, you know, you can absolutely earn a living and like for making change, because there's a whole conversation about how like, you know, being a change maker means you're standing up for a life of poverty. Like, I don't believe that. Of course, it's not, you might not be able to compare it to like certain other fields, right? But don't feel like, oh, like you shouldn't be paid for your time, your money, and like the skills that you bring to the table. Don't think about that, but understand that that's not what it's about. I don't know how to explain it very well, but that shouldn't be your driving force. Like, there should be something bigger than yourself that drives you to actually pursue this part of social impact. Number two, I would say that community is important.
Wow, yes.
Very important. The people that you surround yourself with in social impact and even in any space is super important, because the concept of community care is something that we're talking about a lot. And I would say like one of the things that really kept me going in the last few months and the last 1 year was community care. So being surrounded by a community of amazing women from, you know, Fora last year, in Toronto, to this year when I did Vital Voices, just that community, to even like even to like beyond all these programs I participated in, finding like-minded people within and outside your country in the social impact space you're trying to like, you know, make an impact in is very key, because you do not know it all. Particularly people that have gone ahead of you. I remember when I wanted to start Sisterly HU, I got opportunity to sit with the now friend. At the time, she wasn't even a friend. She was just someone who was like writing a newsletter I subscribed to. And she was like, do you want to have a chat? And I was like, yes, whatever. Like, yeah, let me have the chat. And now she's one of my greatest like people in social impact, one of my sisters, I would say. And I remember that day, she had started like a social impact initiative about like a few months earlier. That was the one I subscribed to. And I asked her a question that, you know, I was having not like cold feet, but I was a bit like, I was struggling with, you know, starting Sisterly HU at the time, because I was so bothered about branding and about like things like logo and figuring out like all these details, because I like
new to the
those.
space.
Yeah, like I was new to the space, but then I'm an organizer, so I like things to be ready to go, and like some people call it perfectionist, right? So I remember her telling me like, sis, like these things that you want to like be worried about, they're going to change. So like don't bother your head about it too much and just start, because you can continue to build your brand and figure out all of those things. And if I didn't have that conversation with her, I may have never known about it, right? So surround yourself with community. So many people, like so many things. I have questions now. I reach out to people in my community that I've built, and I'm able to ask them questions. Oh, I feel this way, or like I'm struggling with this thing, or like my venture, something is happening to my venture or whatever, and they're able to like give me answers. Or if they don't have the answers, connect me with someone that can give me the answers, or even tell me like, we don't have the answers, and that's okay, because you will not have all the answers regardless of whatever path that you pursue. Also, I would say like the continuous learning is very important to make it in this space. Again, you don't know it all, so always like, again, surround yourself with a community of people, but make sure that you're not the only person talking. Because sometimes in social impact, or like even in any space where like they're leaders, right, where there's usually in social impact, you're always speaking to, except like when you're interfacing with the people that you serve, you're usually speaking to stakeholders who are either like, you know, more experienced than you, or you're doing similar things, right? It's basically like a room full of achievers, people who have done fantastic things and are still doing fantastic things. So there can be a tendency, because you're either all at the same playing field, or you even have people who are like higher than you. Either you want to like impress them by now feeling like you know everything, or because you're in a space where you are both similar, you just want to like share. So listening intentionally with empathy, holding out space for other people is very, very key. So learning from the experiences of people in unstructured ways, but also structured learning. So whether it's by taking a course, like, or doing a fellowship, like I would say that those things are important because there are so many things that you are going to learn on the job, but there are some things that you're not going to learn on the job until somebody tells you or shows you how to navigate it. That's just life. So understanding all of that is very key. And I mean, like, rest and care is very important.
Strong. I like it.
Sometimes as activists or advocates, because of the work that we do, we're usually like working to like solve problems that we may experience, but for the most part, other people are usually these things we're doing are beyond us, right? We're just a piece. I usually say this thing. I am not sisterly HU. Sisterly HU is above and beyond me. I'm just a piece to the puzzle, right? I see myself like as a driver driving the car. I'm not the car. I'm just inside the car driving it. Yeah, and I can't even. Yeah, there's so many. I'm just trying to say like I'm not sisterly HU. I could never be. And so sometimes because of this work that you do, which can be intensive, which can be sometimes, people in social impact, sometimes they're working with very sensitive topics, sometimes they feel like, I can't, like, this cause cannot do without me. And I mean, there's some validity to all of these things, but it's very important to take care of yourself. So whether it's by, spending time with people that you care about, taking breaks, understanding sometimes where like you actually have to take a step back from what you're doing and then maybe come back later, like fine, like no matter how intense the work you're doing, the point is you need to be okay for you to actually do that work. And for a lot of social media, rather for social impact activists or professionals, we tend to feel like, oh my God, like if you don't show up, like everybody, like the world, I don't even know, or like things won't go on. So it's very okay to like take care of yourself. It's okay to delegate. It's okay to not carry everything, this burden on your head all of the time. Because if that, like, you need to be fine to actually advance the cause or drive the mission of your impact forward, basically. So those are, I would say, like, in a nutshell, those are the things I would say for like people who want to like start social impact work. For people who want to start building their personal brand, I would say, like, I think I've covered a lot of things previously about what to watch out for.
Yeah, you can say
I think I'll just emphasize.
Yeah, the two. Whatever.
I'll just emphasize that, I would emphasize, like, don't be scared to be a pioneer. Sometimes you'll be the first, but one thing about the beautiful thing is that if you're the first, like, you can't be the last, right? I was one of the first people to do certain things on LinkedIn, whatever, but I'm not the last. There are now so many other, even top voices, Nigerian and outside. I remember top voices in 2022, the first ever top voices list. I think we're only two. No, I don't know whether I can't remember the number of Nigerians that they were there, but I was like the youngest at the time, and it was just like 10 women. But now they're like way more like top voices in Africa, and it's just really cool to see like other people doing it. I'm not necessarily saying like, well, I'm not saying I was one that opened the space or whatever, but the point is that at the end of the day, I have people send me messages saying like, oh, like, I watch out for your post because you posted this, I'm able to do this, because you said this, I'm able to, like, at the end of the day, like, those being a pioneer is you paving the way for other people. And it might not come back to you. That's not the point. The point is that you're opening the doors for other people behind you and paying it forward, basically. So don't be scared to like do that. Also, like, there are so many tools, like we mentioned. Curiosity is very key. Learning is key. There's so many tools online and offline that you can leverage. If you're a planner, you can make a plan. If you're less structured, just figure it out. It's like, have a strategy, sit down and think about it. I would say like intentionality is very key. Like I mentioned, yes, like there are some times where you can wing it, but for the most part, I would say like what really helped me to start particularly when I started LinkedIn, again, I didn't have any blueprint. I was trying to figure things out by myself as a Nigerian in a very international space at the time. And so there was a lot of sitting down, thinking about it, writing in my notebook that I did, that, I would advise anybody who wants to start personal branding, sit down and, have some notes like, okay, I want to build a website. I want to start posting on LinkedIn 5 times a week, whatever. Think about that. Consistency is key when it comes to building a personal brand. And there's something I always say, like, that, consistency is not showing up every day. It's showing up when you choose to show up. But like, I would say, like, most importantly, consistency is what happens when you fall off. So we will fall off, like, no matter how it is, like, we will always fall off, trust me. But what happens when you're falling off? Do you, like, now start to give yourself more excuses, or start to feel like bad, and then, like, not now go back to doing what you used to do because you feel like, oh my God, I spent 6 months away from this platform, and so nobody wants to hear my voice. The point is, yes, you spent 6 months away. Nobody, like, nothing day. Nigerian people say, like, no, voila, just continue the next day, right?
Yeah.
Honestly, and keep going. Keep, like, showing up, keep going. I would say that that's really what consistency is. And as I said, like, one thing I kept mentioning is, you know yourself, you know what works for you. There's a point where you have to go out of your comfort zone, and I will be honest, yes, it's not everything that will come easy for you. But the best thing you can do in life is to make things simple for yourself. So if you know that, oh, like, I'm super busy right now, I cannot post on social media 5 days a week. Do 1 day a week, start with 1 day a week. Then work your way up to, like, 2 days a week. Like you can literally, like, think about what works for you, be practical with what works for you. Because if you say, oh, I'm going to post 5 times a week, and you have, like, a full-time job, like a full-time parent, you have, like, so many things you're doing, you may not be able to do that, right? But if you tell yourself, you know what, for now, I'm going to post 2 times a week, and you actually, like, meet those commitments, then it makes sense for you to, like, it will be easy rather for you to be able to, like, follow through. So know what works for you. One example I always give was when I went to law school last year. I knew that law school anywhere in the world is super intensive. And so it was and I wanted to still show up on LinkedIn at the time. And so what I did was I found, like, so many tools that helped me. So I was batch creating. For example, I would create posts for, like, a week and have them saved. At the time, LinkedIn didn't have a scheduling tool. So I used to use Buffer. I would put my post in Buffer. And so every morning, regardless of whether I'm there, it just goes out, because at the time my classes used to start by 8. So what I would do was, by 7:30, I would get to class early, because I wanted to sit down in class, and I didn't want to, like, let LinkedIn be the reason I'll be late for class. I'll come to class, like, maybe 7:30, sit down from 7:30 to, like, 7:45 or 50. I would be, like, engaging on LinkedIn. So when my post goes out by 8, I don't use I didn't used to use my phone in class as a student. So it was until, like, the break time by 12, if we even got a break. Law school was something else. Then I will now open my phone and, like, respond to the comments. So, like, there's so many ways to, like, go around this regardless
Optimize
of
your
what your
time.
schedule is.
Yeah.
So batch creating is helpful, optimizing your time, automated tools. There's just so many things that you can do. But ultimately, right, all of these things I'm saying are useless except you actually show up and do it. So just like Nike, just do it.
I love that. That's a great way to end up. Just like Nike, just do it. Get it done. Get it done. And I believe we did. We got it done. Again, thank you so much for coming on the Professional Pillar Talk. It was amazing. Like, you're a wealth of knowledge. You're a gem. Your energy is infectious. Titilapo. I want to say thank you. Titilape. Well,
yeah.
I'm probably gonna butcher it, but thank you so much for coming onto the show. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Anybody who's listening, what's the best place to find you? I know you've got a website. I know you've got a LinkedIn.
Gosh.
What's the best places? Please let us know.
So the best place to find me, I would say, is LinkedIn. I'm probably, like, most active on my LinkedIn page. But like, even these days, and be honest, I'm not even, like, the most active, because life is lifing and things are, like, so many things are on my plate. But I do try to show up as on LinkedIn as often as I can. There's my website, so you can check my website, www.titilopeadedokun.com. I also have a second website for my consulting. So I don't know, like, if I offer consulting services where I, like, work with founders and leaders of, like, social impact initiatives, just to help them, because I've been through their shoes, right? Particularly through, like, their marketing questions and their communications questions and their branding questions. So you can also find my website. So it's just co. So it's basically www.titilopeadedokun.com, but it has, like, co rather than www. It has co dots. But you still see, like, you see the website on my main website. You can find me where you find Sisterly HQ too. Because I'm very, like, involved in, like, all the aspects of our work, right
Yes.
now. Yeah, so you can find me, like, you can find Sisterly Hichu on Instagram, on TikTok. Yeah, so like we're very big on TikTok. So TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn. We have Threads, but we don't really use it like that. So you find me on Sisterly Hichu's TikTok, either like green screening an opportunity or doing a voiceover. You find me on Instagram Live, like having sessions with our communities. You can find me in all of those spaces. You can also find me on Instagram. So I have a new Instagram for like my consulting business. So I have titilope.co. So at titilope.co on Instagram, you find me. Currently, I have my actual Instagram open, but me and my Instagram, we usually play like a game of open and private. Currently, it's open, but it just might be private like in the next few weeks or days. So you can check me out on Instagram for now, but you might not be able to depending on when this goes out and if it's private. But yeah, so that's pretty much. But if you like, obviously, like, I'm very accessible. I have a good digital footprint, so you can even Google me. You see like my features, you see my social media, you see like the articles I've written. It's super easy to find all of those things online.
Amazing, amazing. I'll make sure to put all those in the show notes. But for now, have a beautiful week, and thanks so much for coming into the show.
Thank you so much for having me.